Using AI to write your therapy progress notes is a great option for many clinicians, especially those of us who fall into that neurospicy camp. But after testing out many of these AI progress note generators, I have two cautions for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Maelisa McCaffrey, author of the upcoming book, Stress-Free Documentation for Mental Health Therapists. And today I'm going to share with you my two biggest concerns about using AI to write your progress notes. Disclaimer, it is May of 2024, so if you're watching this 10 months, 10 years from now, things within AI might have drastically changed by then. But as of right now, here are my two big concerns. Concern number one, these AI platforms, the ones that are built specifically for mental health professionals, produce a ton of data for you to write your progress note. So you might have a recording of the session, and then a full transcript of the session, and then a summary of the session, and then an outline of some topics that were discussed in the session, as well as the progress note that it generated. And in some cases, you can create multiple progress notes. Maybe you're choosing what template you like best, and so you made 4 different progress notes just from one session. That's a lot of information to have about one session. But what happens to all of that data? And is all of that data considered part of the mental health record? Most of them are designed so that you log into their separate system, use it to generate the progress note, copy paste a progress note, and then upload that into your EHR. Well, as soon as you do that, you now have information about a progress note or a session in 2 different platforms. So once it's integrated within your EHR, which is what most of us would consider the official mental health record, what happens to the other information? Is that still technically part of the mental health record? Especially when some of it is exactly the same as what is in the official mental health record. This is all still to be determined, and it could be interpreted differently in various scenarios and across different states. I'm going to talk about some options for covering yourself in this scenario, but first let's go into my second big concern. And that is, if you're using one of the platforms where you're allowed to record a session and you have that recording, are you getting special permission to record your client? Using an AI platform to write a progress note is a very different thing from actually recording a client session. Those are 2 separate consent issues. So let's break that down. Maybe you see a client for telehealth. So you both log in on each of your own computers and you log in through one of these AI progress note generator platforms, do the session. It is recording the session so that it can create a progress note for you. There are potentially 3 additional consent issues in that scenario. One is telehealth, which the general standard is that still, even though it's so common, it does require special consent, meaning special things that you discuss with your client about using telehealth for mental health services. The second one is using AI. So you're using AI to generate a progress note. You're using AI not only as like a transcription, but as a tool that is analyzing the data of the session. And you're using that to create something that is officially part of someone's health records. And the third concern is that in order to do all of this, you are also recording the session. And many states have very specific and clear rules around recording. And as mental health professionals, we all pretty much across the board need to get special permission to record a therapy session with a client. These are my 2 biggest concerns about using AI tools to write progress notes. Now, if you've already been using one of these AI progress note generators, don't freak out. It's okay. I'm going to give you some ideas for ways that you can cover yourself and mitigate the risks for both yourself and for your clients. Remember that your overall goal is always to do no harm. So when you're using something like AI, it's still very new, it's progressing. And what is important is to inform your clients about that process and about what you're doing within that process. Personally, I believe informed consent is probably the biggest issue with all of these things. AI is still really new, and the key to using it ethically is to be cautious. It's okay to be slow about how you implement it, and most importantly, obtain client consent along the process. You must inform your clients of the fact that this is new and you're testing it. And if there is something you don't know the answer to, that's okay, as long as you let people know that. So first and foremost, always get client consent. And that's if you use AI for any aspect of this process. So even if you just log into one of these platforms, type in a few notes that summarizes your session, or maybe talk to it and dictate your feedback about the session, and then use it to produce a note, and so your client is kind of not really involved in that process, it's still something that is impacting their medical record, and you're using AI to write what could be a potentially important piece of paper or document in their record. So it is important that you inform them of that process, that you use AI to write progress notes after the fact. And then if you are using one of the recording features, even if you haven't done this until now, it's okay. Get client consent now in order to record them. Related to this, you do want to have a special consent form that outlines what is your policy. So what do you do with the recordings? Do you delete them? Which I would recommend doing. And if you do delete them, in what time frame? And if you don't delete them, or before you delete them, how are they stored and where are they stored? You also want to let clients know whether or not they have access to those recordings. Most likely, they have the right to access those recordings as long as they exist. My next recommendation is to delete all the data as soon as you have the progress note that you were using this AI tool to create. So create that progress note, copy it, paste it into whatever official record you have, whether that's an EHR or something else, and then delete whatever you can so that there is not random client data about a session in another platform when it doesn't need to be there. Just because a platform is HIPAA secure and because you have a BAA and you're using it appropriately doesn't mean that it's in your client's best interest to still have recordings or transcripts or full details about their session in various forms in multiple platforms. And before you come at me in the comments about psychotherapy notes and about how if something is separate from the clinical record, then it can have special protection, I want you to consider one question. What would you do if you were in dire need for some reason and you knew that a medical professional had great details, recordings, transcripts of something that might help you? Would you seek access to that? I certainly would. And you know what? If I was the client, I would expect that I have a right to that information. The thing is, at this point, all of this stuff is so new, we don't have specific laws or rules around keeping things in multiple platforms or what an AI generates versus what the clinician has determined to be the final medical record. Do not be the therapist who is involved in that court case and sets the precedent for the rest of us. In my mind, a much better option is to just delete all the extraneous data once you have that official progress note and you have that secured in the official record. And of course, always letting clients know how that process works, where their records are, what their records include, and what they can access. Lastly, I do want to say, don't let this scare you away from testing some of these AI systems or using an AI platform, especially to generate progress notes or other mental health records. I have talked with many clinicians who have used the words life-changing to say that using some of these AI progress note generators has truly changed the way they write notes, the way they're able to spend time throughout their day, and how positive they feel about their notes. This territory is really new, so if you're interested, then test it out. Try it out for yourself. Create some policies. Get training on how to use the different AI platforms and on what different things you might have to consider. And lastly, get involved. Most of our professional associations are talking about this behind the scenes. There are committees forming. We are rewriting guidelines. So if this is important to you, please do get involved and be part of that process. So I'm curious what you are doing to keep our mental health field up to date and embrace AI ethically and appropriately. Comment below what it is that you're doing or how you plan to take action. And until next time, happy writing.